Hi there, good evening and welcome to this Ibrox for your Sunday night podcast. This is the Sunday session. My name's Scott Patterson, and if you're joining us across YouTube or Twitter or Facebook tonight, then as always, you're very welcome if you're joining us there. Get involved in the comments tonight. Our YouTube feed is going bananas already. Lots of chat in there about Tillman and of course the game yesterday, which we will cover as the night progresses. We will review it and analyse it as best we can, or indeed as best as the two guests joining me tonight can. We will discuss what happens next for this squad of players, what it means for them moving forward between now and the end of the May and potentially into next season. Lots to discuss. And before we get into a very special on this day, a magnificent on this day, we should say, I will introduce our first two guests tonight. And it's hi to the boss. Tommy joins us. Hi, Tommy. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. I do enjoy those intros. I'm not entirely sure that you and the rest of the group treat me as the boss, I have to say, the majority of the time.
True story.
But, yeah, that is very much the true story. Yeah, listen, we've got a lot to get through. It's not coming off the back of a particularly fantastic Easter weekend, but such is life. It's good to be able to get it out in a discussion forum. Very cathartic.
Absolutely. And joining us all the way from the US of A, Craig joins us. Hi, Craig. How are you? Big Tex.
Oh, I thought Tex had been forgotten by now, but thanks for having me, Scott. Pleasure to be on, as much as can be said. I'm trying to take a leaf out of the manager's book yesterday and trying to stay positive. So I'll be good cop today.
Well, listen, someone's got to play that. You know, someone's got to be that character. So listen, I did suggest that we were going to have an on this day. And listen, in this day in 1986, I think Rangers really changed the face of what we now understand as a football club. Tommy, this day in 1986, they appointed Graeme Souness as player manager. They brought him in from Sampdoria to succeed Jock Wallace, of course. So I was 6 when that happened. I remember it quite vividly, Souness coming in. And a couple of things that I will share just shortly about what I can sort of go back on. I've got a couple of quotes, one from David Holmes, and it's not the lemon one before we go into that, which I think everyone can largely look back and associate with, but Souness is someone who I look back to in my Rangers sort of youth, if you like, is really changing the face of the game up here, because of course he did end up bringing up all the England internationals, and we know what happened, the successful run we went on to thereafter. But for you, Tommy, Souness, what did he mean to you coming into Rangers?
Well, I'm a massive Souness fan, I have to say as well, the mustachioed iconoclast. But I might have a wee stone in my shoe. I might have a wee stone in my shoe here about this. I thought he joined Rangers on the 8th of April, not the 9th.
I need to get back to the drawing board on that.
So I might be just throwing a wee curveball in there. That said, I'm pretty comfortable that we didn't have this pod yesterday and then discuss. But anybody in the comments, both of you gentlemen, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I thought he joined 86 on the 8th of April. But listen, I think you're absolutely right, Scott, in terms of what you're saying there. He was bigger than just a manager coming in. I think he was on a 3-year deal at Sampdoria, kind of 2 years in, if I remember correctly, when he tapped up to come across here, and he was glamorous. He was glamorous. He had the permatan, he had the perm, he had the tash, and then he just kind of swept into power. A small kind of story that gets lost in amongst all that, not necessarily about Souness, but you know, everybody talks about Johnston. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes as well. But actually, when guys like Chris Woods and all that were unveiled, you've got Holmes. I remember the press conference. You can find it on YouTube as well, when Woods is unveiled, and one of the press pack asks about his religion, and Holmes says, "We don't care. If you've got a question about religion, you can ask it to him. We don't care. I'm making a point here." That's pretty much a direct quote. So the stall was set out really early on some of those bigger points to change the face of Rangers, change the face of the game. And Souness was at the heart of that. I mean, not only was he a world-class midfielder, but sweeping in, he was the right person to sweep in. And I think somebody will keep me right here. I don't want to steal all of the points that maybe Craig will want to make as well. But if I remember correctly, once he'd come in was left with like 4 players out of the full team squad. He cleared everybody out and then started the rebuild. But yeah, you think real revolution, real turning point revolution, and that word gets banded about a bit easily. But yeah, seismic earthquake in Glasgow and in Scotland when Souness rocked in, and then Rangers took Scottish football by the nose and dragged it into the 21st century. That's Graeme Souness.
Craig, I know you were here when. No, I don't know what age you are certainly, but I know you were here or hereabouts, if you like, when Souness came in. Any memories of Graeme Souness yourself, even memories that you've heard from people that were around when indeed he came in?
So it's not often I'm the youngest sitting on the podcast, but it appears that I am. So I was 2. But, I have an older brother, 7.5 years older than me. So that was his, first real memory of Rangers, was Graeme Souness coming in and changing the landscape. When you posted the agenda earlier, I looked back a wee bit because 2-year-old, my own memories kind of jaded. My first memories are more of, the team that Walter Smith inherited from Souness. But I found out that he was 33 years old when he came in '86. 33. I'm 39 this month, and I've not even revolutionised my own life yet, let alone Scottish football. So I can really, really appreciate, the magnitude of the job, the confidence to take the weight of that job on his shoulders. I don't think we've taken. I think we hadn't won a title since the 70s, right? So it was sheer dominance for the other side of the city. And he grabbed us by the scruff of the neck. Not only did he modernise the club, bringing it into the next era, if you like, he did it in style. He did it in a pioneer stature the guy has. I was lucky enough to go back for the manager's dinner last year and for the 150th anniversary celebrations. And it was Souness, McLeish and Advocate. Got my picture taken, proud as punch. And Souness was on the plane in front of me coming up from London. And it must have been the same day went to see the late, great Jimmy Bell. It was just before we lost him. And because he had the same scarf on and stuff, same stuff he had on the plane, right? So he must have went straight to Auchenhowie. But he turned around, he was asked to put his mask on by the air hostess. And the air hostess says, "Put your mask on." And it was only when he turned his head I realised, oh shit, that's Graeme Souness sitting in front of me. And he gave her that look, that's like, do I have to put my mask on? And I was shitting myself. I'm watching this guy, absolutely malking players and opposition. So, no, fond memories. I remember his team very well. That was my first real Rangers team. Butcher, Woods, Mark Walters was my favourite at the time. Fabulous Rangers team that Souness gave Walter to inherit. But yeah, I don't think with the education I've had on Graeme Souness, his impact in our history can be underestimated whatsoever.
Do you know that way? I'm going to share some bits and pieces of my memories of Souness very shortly. I look at a quote, the famous quote, of course, was it was Jim White who was interviewing David Holmes just at the mouth of the tunnel. And he asked him how he was feeling, and Holmes indeed referred to having a lemon in his pocket, and every so often he was throwing that in his throat to try and keep the smile off his face. Very, very proud moment for David Holmes, and I'm sure it's something that even now he will be very quietly pleased with the effect that he had on our football club. Another quote he had that day, which is really interesting: if this club is going to be ambitious, then you have to go for the very best. And I think Graeme is indeed the very best. And I think if you take that quote as it is and you look at what it meant bringing in someone of Graeme Souness's stature, Scottish midfielder, early 30s, coming in, managing an absolute revolution. It was a huge moment for the football club. From my perspective, I can remember him bringing in guys like, the obvious English guys are Woods and Butcher and Roberts. He was also responsible, let's not forget, for bringing in guys like Mark Falco, who was a wonderful striker at Tottenham. The late Ray Wilkins, of course, came in and wished he was there for longer based on his relationship they had with Graeme Souness. Trevor Francis came in to play for, all based on the fact that Graeme Souness was in charge. There's no doubt that he is absolutely someone who I think we'll look back on. You know, we've got a rich history and many esteemed guys that have went in as the top dog. And I think particularly in our lifetime, we're all of a similar sort of age, like it or not, Craig. And I do think we'll look back at Graeme Souness and think, you know, I don't mind admitting, but maybe one of the main reasons that I'm such a big Rangers supporter is because of what Graeme Souness done for my football club in 1986. And again, you know what I mean, it goes without saying, you can't forget players like Colin West, who of course was his first signing. He brought in Trevor Stevens, of course, Gary Stevens as well. So he was responsible for so many great things at our football club. And when I seen it on this day, whether I've got the date right or not, by the way, it was certainly on this weekend in 1986. I think we can safely say that it was a game changer for the football club, and we've got a huge amount to thank David Holmes for. And incidentally, I think I've said on this podcast before, Tommy, and I think you've said something similar. David Holmes is an absolutely huge part of Rangers history as I know it. I think it's sometimes you can walk by just the influence that he had on that deal, and you can walk by the influence that he had on the football club from the sort of mid to late 80s onwards. So we thank him for that in the first instance. Tommy, Old Firm League game number 3 yesterday, Celtic Park. Everyone knows what happens. We're not going to cover the game in its entirety because I really don't want to depress people. However, when we do speak about yesterday's match, there are some things that I do want us to go into in as much detail as we can. I want to speak about James Tavernier, of course, at last getting his 100th goal for the football club. What it means for him moving forward. It's a wee bit of a shame that it wasn't a winning goal against Celtic, to be perfectly frank. I want to speak a little bit about the defensive frailties that we've seen yesterday, what it means for Souttar and Davies. I have to say, with the exception of the Davies era for goal number 2 and the Souttar era for goal number 3, I thought both played reasonably well, considering it was their first time together. Souttar's second start in a Rangers jersey since he came in the summer, we have to add. But I do want to start, and I'd be remiss not to start, to be perfectly honest with you, with a goal that was disallowed halfway through the first half. We regularly refer to Old Firm games, how big decisions, and if they go in your favour, they're great. If they go against you, they're not so good. But Tommy, I think what you do need in these games, particularly if you're going to Celtic Park, we know away support, and it's just you against them, literally. You need the correct calls to be made at the right times, and VAR and Nick Walsh and your man Clancy got it badly wrong yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. So I think it's quite clearly a goal. I don't think there's any sort of foul there. We can talk about the other one with the shirt pulling, where we didn't get a penalty later on as well. But yeah, I mean, you've already kind of highlighted there. Kevin Clancy does. You know, he is a really poor official. Right? People might disagree with me in the comments here. I don't think it's specific to Rangers. I just think he's a really poor official right across the board. And we could get into the fact that we don't have great officials in Scotland, full stop. Right? But he's incompetent. He bottles out whatever selection you want to take there. Right? You could probably take both of them. The real problem with this one is it then goes into VAR, and Nick Walsh is sitting there thinking, I quite fancy a quiet Easter weekend, so I'm not going to do anything. I don't know how you could then look at the VAR situation and say that's not a potential issue, and at least get the ref to come and have a look at it. That's where VAR is like Kevin Clancy down as well, in all honesty, right? It's supposed to be a support mechanism for the referee. You know, it might not garner a lot of praise here, but that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Whereas the VAR team have chucked, well, they've taken the easy option, which is the ref's made the decision in the moment. We've seen it. Question mark. When you look at it, how you can come to a different decision, walk right past it, just let the game continue, and it made a massive difference. I'm not saying it would have won us the game. I'm not saying anything like that. Right, lots have happened, but if you're going to get VAR as a system working correctly, you need officials who are competent. That's the bigger point here. we have to look at how officials are selected, what level of training they have, what level of professionalism they have, and more importantly, and everybody's been shouting about this, and it impacts every team in the league, including Celtic, including us, whatever, right? What's the level of responsibility and accountability they have when they mess up in what is the glamour game of our league? There doesn't seem to be any accountability. They just roll on, they shrug their shoulders, the ref association doesn't do anything, and that's it. That's the core central problem here, and ultimately it's cost us a goal in that particular game.
Craig, I know you had to go up very, very early in the morning to see the game where you are yesterday. As I say, without going into the nuts and bolts of the game, but I would assume that decision, when Morelos scored, for example, I'm sure you woke up a few of your neighbours. Is that quite fair?
I'm getting better as the years go by to remain quiet and not wake my family up in the morning. But I'll be honest, my genuine reaction was that I wasn't surprised. You know, I think we're up against 60,012 people yesterday. I think we all knew it going into it. I will add to Tommy's comments. I do agree with him about, I think it is mostly incompetence as a referee. But there is that sprinkling of extra, which it exists, whether we care to admit it or not. What percentage? Who knows? But what was interesting to me was the timing. You know, something similar happened at Livingston with the offside. It was a very, very quick decision. There was no. It was almost like Clancy was one of their ball boys. You know, playing into the hands of let's keep pace, let's go and let's get on with the game. I just thought that there was no time. And to Tommy's point, it's not VAR that's making the decision. All they can say is, hey, you know, Kevin, you might want to go and take another look at this. It's ultimately Kevin Clancy's decision, is it not? Correct me if I'm wrong. So if that's not it's a goal in the biggest derby in the biggest game in the country. If that's not worth a look, what is? So I'm baffled. Anyone across world football, including those of the East End Glasgow persuasion, will admit that that was a goal. And they'd be absolutely furious if their team had denied that goal yesterday. And we are rightly furious.
Do you know, and Rangers on Tour refers to the commentary immediately at that time by Ali McCoist, a worldwide football name. Everywhere you go, people know where Ali McCoist is. And I'll quote him, absolutely embarrassing the way we are using VAR, Tommy. And listen, there's nothing to say that Rangers would have went on to win the game yesterday had the Morelos goal counted. However, it comes at a time when Rangers are on top in the game. I felt we were beginning to develop a stranglehold against the game. And I don't care what anyone says, and Craig alludes to it quite rightly, a goal at Celtic Park when you've got none of your support there is huge at that point in the game. Halfway through the first half, silences the fans because they think they're there for a big party. If we took the lead at that moment and the goal did stand, it would have silenced them, and I think it would have allowed us to see a Celtic that maybe we haven't seen before, effectively a team that are chasing the game. We didn't really give them that opportunity to chase the game yesterday. Different pod, I appreciate that, but I just think the officials, for them not to even consider looking at it, raises just too many questions of all the obvious conspiracy theories that we became used to over the years.
Listen, I get that. I'll be absolutely front and centre. I'm not one who says that there's a conspiracy theory. I don't naturally believe in that, right? I think primarily I always go to the incompetency or the incompetent call in terms of the refereeing structure. Do I think if you wanted to get into the conspiracy area, I don't naturally think it's a conspiracy other than human beings saying, what's the easiest route for me here? The easiest route is I might just go with the quick and easy decision and I don't have to face into negative press, pressure, etc., right? But I'm not naturally going into that. I think there's a conspiracy within the refereeing or officials structure against us. It's a baffling decision and it's a howler, right? Back to what Craig was saying. So I think the process whereby is any call that is flashed up to VAR, the refs made a decision, VAR would intervene and say if they feel he's made a clear and obvious error. So if they whisper in his ear, we think you've made a mistake there, then you can go and have a look at it. That's supposed to be the way the process works, as far as I'm aware. They've obviously went, no, you haven't made a clear and obvious error here. That clear and obvious is doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's a lot of nuance to that phrase in terms of being able to pass through that. But that's where you get with that. What I think is that there is a pressure that's been built over a number of years that there's an extra layer of analysis, etc. If Celtic sometimes haven't gotten decisions, do I think it would have changed the match? Listen up, I'm all out of crystal balls here, so to speak, right? Which is why I'm walking funny. But and excuse me that joke, right? But in terms of anything can happen, right? Celtic are a good side. We weren't playing amazingly well. They weren't playing well. But I do absolutely agree with everything you've said there, which is in front of a packed house with no Rangers fans. They have come thinking that there was going to be a walkover. They would get the fast start that they're used to against us. That they'd have a little bit of a sing-song in the sunshine. All of a sudden, we get the first goal and we're playing relatively toe-to-toe with them. Certainly not getting overrun in midfield as we've seen previously. There would have been grumbles. And that's what you start to translate into the pitch. As it was, that was taken away from us and we conceded first. It would have been good to have seen what it was like if Rangers would have went 1-up. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'd have won the game. But the referees stepped in and made a pretty poor decision.
So, Tom, I want to stay with you because later on, post-match, I believe it was the Rangers Review, who indicated that the club would be effectively sending a letter to the SFA complaining about that goal. I listen, when I see these sort of headlines, I always think, I wonder what can you possibly be at? What will you possibly be asking in said letter? Do you know what I mean? Why did you not award the goal, ref? So, I mean, Tommy, what do you think? What are the club going to say to the SFA, and what do you think they'll say to the extent where we expect the results are going to change? They're not going to get a response that's going to be overly favourable. Are we just suggesting that it's going to be a complaint against Kevin Clancy's refereeing?
Not entirely sure that it would be that, because as we've referenced here, the referee makes a decision, VAR's the stop control, if you like, right? It's supposed to step in and say, by the way, ref, you've made a clear and obvious mistake here. So if you're complaining about Clancy, you're also complaining about the VAR system and Nick Walsh in the team. So if it did that, you know where it is. Rangers historically have had a bit of a problem with Kevin Clancy. We know that. I think Michael Beale got pulled over the coals when he was assistant under Steven Gerrard for making comments about Kevin Clancy as well. I need to admit, letters to the SFA almost strikes me as a little bit of a try. Let's throw the fans a kind of bone here that we're doing something. It's a bit of a PR exercise because it's exactly as you say. We didn't get this. We'd like you to explain your refereeing decision. Right, my refereeing decision is I thought it was a foul. VAR backed me up. Please don't write here again. How did you get this number? Right, it's pretty much that simple. And we've seen this before with Rangers as well in terms of there was a dossier and we were going to force change with the refereeing in the governing body and it never came to fruition. So I get why fans would maybe want it because it shows that the club's doing something, but don't sell me a dream here. It's a letter through the post. It won't be a letter, it'll be an email, but that won't really get looked at. Nothing's going to change over that. It's just a bit of a milksop. So I've got little time for that type of grandstanding, to be honest.
Yeah, and listen, at RFC 72, it wasn't even that just one decision. There was a few that were baffling, which I fully agree with. I felt Callum McGregor was lucky to stay in the pitch as well, to be honest with you. But I think it'd be incredibly naive of us to expect for Celtic to get players sent off at their place, particularly their Scottish captain. I don't think there's any danger that is going to happen at Celtic Park, but RFC 72 in the first instance, I would agree with you. Craig, I want to speak to you next about the run-up to the game. It became very apparent on Friday night. There was rumours bubbling around on social media that Conor Goldson had a problem, and it did look like he was going to miss the game, which meant that it was going to be John Souttar. He's a real man, he exists. He was going to start at centre half yesterday, alongside Ben Davies, of course, a pairing that we've never seen before. I think Ben Davies has been in a relatively decent run of form. You have Souttar, who hadn't started the game since Livingston, match day 1 at Livingston. So there was a possibility that could have been a bit of a disaster. Out with the goals, goal number 2, goal number 3. How did you think they done in the first instance? How did you think they got on?
Yeah, I think you've already alluded to it, that they did fine. You know, John Souttar, it's really his first game, right? I know he says his second start, but he was gubbed at Livy and he got taken off after, it was in the first half, I think. It was really his first game for Rangers, and to start in that environment completely unexpectedly and just deal with it. I wish we'd have had the luxury of bringing John Souttar in when we were lackluster for the Champions League. So I thought he was fine. I watched the time difference is obviously a challenge for me over here, but I watched the boys' pod late on Friday before I went to my bed. That was the first I'd heard any indication about Conor not making the team. The rumour mill was in full swing, and I think it was Ian and Ross, and that the anxiety levels were through the roof. And I thought, there's no way. It's Conor Goldson, you know, he doesn't miss. So, and with these big games, you know, the rumours tend to swirl. But lo and behold, the circus that is the Rangers' injury list continues. And with these fixtures over the years, there seems to be, we're dealt some type of curse going into it when it matters. Luckily, it wasn't really the story of the game. I know you mentioned the 2 howlers, so I mean that makes me look like an idiot for saying that, but they honestly did cope very, very well. And I'm more annoyed at the Davies one than I am with the Souttar one. I think there has to be a level of understanding with Souttar, given where he's at and what he had to accomplish yesterday. The Davies one is just got to deal with it, you know. But yeah, I thought they did okay. I like John Souttar. I have big hopes for him going forward. So I was very encouraged, despite the result, what I've seen from him yesterday.
Craig, before I drift over to Tommy, Two Kingdoms wants to know whereabouts you're from in Texas. Don't give away your address just in case he's trying to find you, but by all means, you can give us a clue where you are over there.
Two Kingdoms, that's very, very anonymous. That could be anything, right? So I'll say that I'm not too far from you. I'm more on the west side of Houston. I'll give you that, the west side of Houston.
Brilliant. I love it.
Answered like a man who's on the run from law enforcement there, by the way.
Don't want to be found, Tommy. Don't want to be found.
So, listen, Tommy, one thing I do think, and Craig's sort of spoke about it yesterday there, I two things. I think for the Souttar goal, I think Souttar's pass isn't at the centre of the goal. It's a poor pass into McGregor. I've read a lot about, do you know what I mean, if McGregor was younger, he maybe gets to that. However, if your goalkeeper's 23 and he's left-sided, I would argue the same thing happens in that situation. So I think we almost need, I don't want to say give him a pass, but I think we also need to take that into consideration. There's no doubt that the one that is frustrating, in my perspective, is the Ben Davies one, because it's amateur hour. Ryan Stewart refers to it as abysmal, and I really find it hard to disagree with. I'm a big fan of Ben Davies. As I said from the off, I think he's in a relatively decent vein of form. He didn't look too poor yesterday. I felt more often than not looked reasonably comfortable. However, for the one that he misjudges badly, it's a shocker, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, to a large extent, I agree with a lot of what yourself and Craig were saying. The McGregor angle there of younger keeper, give me peace, would probably be my answer to that. Right, McGregor's not the fault there. It's a really poor pass by Souttar. And what's more annoying, frustrating to me, is if he actually engages his brain as well once he's made the poor pass and goes round McGregor and goes to the goal line and creates a barrier, Jota doesn't get the chance to have that first time finish. So he makes two mistakes from a defensive perspective as well. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be tagging McGregor into that one at all. You know what I mean? And then for the Davies one, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a poor clearance or attempt at a clearance because he doesn't get it out of the park, and then it's inexplicable in terms of the header. Just really inexplicable because he's either, not thinking, or he's concentrating on the Celtic player in front of him and does nothing with the ball whatsoever. I mean, this is bread and butter stuff. So it's a big mistake. We should also be, relatively clear in that every player makes mistakes. People are talking about Bolton being a big loss, which he was. He does a lot of, work in terms of speaking and managing the defence through a game. But Connor Bolton can make howlers as well. Has made howlers. You know what I mean? James Tavernier makes howlers. Borna Barisic, Parkhead in particular. It's quite nice not to be talking about Borna making a howler in terms of not covering his man at the back. But so, horses for courses a wee bit here. I agree. I thought it was a partnership that had been pitched in. They performed pretty well. They actually were a decent pairing. They were decent individually. It tells us something about our team, though, that they tend to make the big mistakes in the big games. So can Souttar and Davies come back from that from a mentality perspective? I'm sure they can, but that's the deeper truth here. Every defender, every goalkeeper in particular, will make big mistakes that are really analysed because they tend to lead to goals. But I don't think it's... I saw some things on social media, some really odd takes, people saying that Davis, for example, was a poor player and it's a waste of money. I'm definitely not in that place yet. I mean, one howler does not a poor player make. I thought Davies up until this point has looked like a pretty assured defender, actually. Maybe a wee question mark over some of his physicality, but in Souttar, I mean, again, the guy's come in, he's a bit ring rusty. You can maybe say, right, okay, should the manager have went with something else there? But mistakes happen. It's unfortunate it happened in a massive game. I think they'll be all right in the future. And
listen, interesting to see you reference Tav, who will come on in a second, but I do want to speak about Borna Barisic, who has a lot of, and I love using your terminology as you're on, but he has a lot of scar tissue from previous visits to Celtic Park. Yesterday, I thought, done relatively well. I didn't think he had too terrible a game, so I think it was important for Borna to get that monkey off his back. I thought he'd done okay yesterday, and I thought on the opposite side, James Tavernier done okay as well. And I say okay from the perspective of not including his 99th and 100th goal for the club. Tommy, I want to stay with you in Tav because we know that there's a huge furore, as there tends to be amongst Rangers support, over whether this gentleman should be in the Hall of Fame or not. This is Ibrox's famous WhatsApp discussion, which you quite rightfully don't get involved in, is full of whether Tav should be in there or indeed whether he shouldn't. I have to say, the free kick on the cusp of half-time was absolutely wonderful, and for him to score again in the second to bring us back into the game, or what we thought was back into the game at that point, was really good. Do you think he's a wee bit disappointed because he could have had a hat-trick yesterday, had a header and a good effort immediately after he scored his second?
I should point out to the watchers that I am part of that WhatsApp group. Right? I tend to read it on my own and then go pour myself a large drink and wonder aloud at some of the takes that the team have there. Trust me, nobody else wants to be a part of that. Somebody asked me the other day, but no, nobody wants to be part of it. In terms of Tav, actually, the game at the weekend, it's still the weekend, isn't it? But kind of neatly sums him up. All right, fantastic individual performance and great numbers. Left with nothing. Yeah. James Tavernier career, roughly in a nutshell, right? Particularly in Celtic. And before anybody jumps in and says, you know, run to Europa League final, 55. No, I get it. I know, right? But by and large, that kind of sums him up. He can be absolutely fantastic, and I think he gets paid extra money every time somebody says his numbers are amazing for a right back, right? There we go. I've just put extra money in his coffers, right? But they are. I'm pretty sure if you sat James Tavernier down and when you'll have scored no goals, but you've got 4 titles, I think I know what you'd take, right? Ultimately, and you could make an argument, certainly in the early years, that he was surrounded by, I was going to say mediocre players. That was probably going to be too kind to them. Some of the charlatans that were inhabiting a jersey that they shouldn't have been allowed to buy, never mind where, in all honesty. But now he's come through a team that's won a title. You might want to have a shot with the board there and say they never really invested as much as they should under Gio, whatever, wider question. But in terms of that Hall of Famer, you don't ask to be in the Hall of Fame. Somebody else decides it for you. My personal feeling is I'm not entirely convinced with that, given that if you want to talk about standards, I throw this out to you both, right, and the watchers. There's a bit of hypocrisy when it comes to that, because people like to say, well, there's standards at the club and we need to maintain those standards. Those standards are built on winning. And they'll turn around at the same point and say, well, James Tavernier is a Hall of Famer because he's scored a lot of goals at right back. Those two things sound like competing to me because they're not the same thing. Yeah. So anyway, it's not about James Tavernier. He might be the captain of the club, but like all players, he's temporary, right? He'll come, he'll go. The club lives on. And in his career, much like Connor Goldson was saying recently in his own interview, they haven't added enough to the trophy room. So, yeah, I'm happy to talk about technique, amazing free kicks, the fact that he should have probably had a hat-trick, the worrying fact that he was the most dangerous player that we had on the park. Pretty sure we need to do something about that in the summer, right? And that's been a long-standing problem. But ultimately, he led his team into our team, into Parkhead once again, and came away empty-handed. That's unfortunately the truth of this matter. It's no more complicated or simple than that. And 2 goals for a right back, didn't change it.
Yeah, Craig, I'm curious to get your thoughts on Tav. I'm aware you're sort of seeing him on screen across there every weekend. Your thoughts on him from the States?
Oh God, you know, Tommy touched upon the WhatsApp group there, and that's my finest hour of the moment that James Tavernier was inducted into the Hall of Fame. 100% in agreement with Tommy on his take. If you want a game that represents James Tavernier in a nutshell, yesterday's a pretty good example. Scores just a worldie and a landmark milestone goal at the end of a half where, if you go back and watch it, the James Tavernier fan club that I'm talking to directly, I don't know how many times he gave the ball away. Lost count of how many times James Tavernier gave the ball away in that first half. That's without even mentioning the goal that comes in. The textbook customary goal we're used to coming in from his side, which was Celtic's first goal. Yeah. I'm not going to point the finger at him because he was arguably a better performer yesterday outside of Raskin. And he's tried to drag the team with the scruff of the neck. He was our biggest threat, maybe, and should have had a hat-trick. He's a wonderful guy. I like him a lot. A great guy. But he's been through umpteen managers. He's been for a number of years now. He's just always on the wrong side, particularly in these games. And these are the games, this is the acid test, where you become a legend or you are not remembered as one. Now, James Tavernier is a bit of a unique case, right? So maybe I'm being a bit unfair. He has some unbelievable personal achievements, much like Harry Kane does down south, right? One hee-haw, but wonderful personal achievements, great player, great technique. But Rangers about winning, and just before I end my rant, Tommy touched upon mentality there. I think that's the change that's needed. That wholesale change that we're looking at is mentality. Gerrard brought it. We thought Gerrard was going to be fitting that we had Souness to open this pod, because I thought Gerrard might have been of a very similar ilk. Brought a real winning mentality back to the club. And we didn't back him. And now we are where we are. 2 managers later, still James Tavernier's captain, still trying to... It's the very definition of going crazy, is trying to, churn out a different result with throwing in the same hand. So I'm all for change. I think James Tavernier has a wonderful legacy at the club. I think he's been a good captain. I don't think he's won enough. And I think it's time to change. And of course, starts with Alfredo and Kent and all the usual, suspects. I don't know. There's no end to this conversation, Scott. But my frustrations are quite obvious. And when I just he's one of these guys that just splits opinion. But I think need to move on from him and many others.
Do you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I agree with you in Tav, and I've said before. I think he's. I want to say he's unfortunate in the sense that he's there and not won enough because the players that haven't been good enough around him. Potentially, one of the things I really hate watching when I'm watching Rangers is us conceding goals from either flank. And I think over the years we've seen it a lot. We've saw goals come in from the channel in between Tavernier and Goldson, and we've saw a lot of goals, a lot of crosses rather, come in from left back, full back areas. And do you know what I mean? Without sort of teaching your granny to suck eggs a little bit, I'm reasonably sure stop the crosses, you stop the goals. And I don't think it's something we're particularly good at. So while I'm really, really pleased that Tav scored his 99th and 100th goal yesterday, he looked gutted. He literally didn't look fussy at all for the fact that he'd scored those 2 goals. He must be aware of what an accolade it is, because there have been far better players at Rangers than James Tavernier that haven't got near 100 goals, that have played in way more advanced positions. However, and I've said it before in this podcast, James Tavernier, and indeed any Rangers footballer, will be very much gauged on how many big shiny things they have in their cabinet when they hang their books up. And James Tavernier will want and need to have more, as far as I'm concerned. Listen, Paul McGarrigle jumps in.
Sorry, before you move on, Scott, I think it's worthwhile saying as well, though, within that, maybe one for yourselves, guys, or the watchers as well, which is, as we face into what is an extremely important summer transfer-wise, right? Is James Tavernier one of those areas of our pitch, our squad, that needs redone right now? Limited budget, having to take players in and out, etc. Is he the go-to? I sense he's probably not. We've got much more pressing areas, right? And I say that after I've just had a bit of a go at him as well. The question I'd maybe put is, should James Tavernier keep the armband? Is there something in there to change the mentality? But if you're sitting with a limited amount of money, you can get another year out of Tav producing these types of numbers, etc. Yes, he'll make mistakes at the back. Every defender does. We just discussed 2 of them, right? But I mean, where else do you go? Forward line, people like Kent, etc., turning over. Maybe another midfielder, false 9. We've got the Tillman question in there. We've got what happens at centre back. Is Yilmaz going to be the answer post-Bonner? We absolutely know we need to do something about a goalkeeper. We need to enhance the squad generally, because some of the players who are on the bench aren't strong enough.
Yeah,
there's a limited amount that's probably coming in the door for selling, you would think. So really, in the grand scheme of things right now in this summer, is James Tavernier top of the change list? I sense I'd rather see a change of the armband than a change of the player.
So that's interesting. I'll come to that in a minute, because we've known that to happen before, pointing to Lorenzo Amoruso. So we know that can happen. I think there's an argument about how good that is for said poor guy that's losing the armband compared to new guy who's getting the armband, and general squad dynamic. I think James Tavernier is a really well-liked guy in and around the club. So I think that's something to bear in mind. Paul McGarrigle, who I think takes us really nicely onto our final topic for the night, which is what it means for this squad of players. And the question I've wrote in my agenda is, can any of them look back on their recent visits to Celtic Park and think that they've really done enough in their career so far? And it dovetails slightly into Paul's comment. Scott, how many players realistically do you see leaving the club in the summer, whether that's out of contract or sold? And he reckons between 8 and 10 will go. So of the 11 that started yesterday, it was McGregor, Tav, Suter, Davies, Borna, Jack, Raskin, Cantwell, Tillman, Kent and Morelos. I think there's an argument for the goalkeeper not being there next season. I think there's an argument for Borna potentially not being there next season, considering how highly rated Ridvan is, and he is highly rated. Ryan Jack is approaching the end of his contract. We all know that Kent and Morelos seem to have their mind elsewhere. Whatever that is, I don't think we know yet. My own personal opinion is I would like to see Kent hang around for another year. However, very, very disappointing yesterday. And I do think that there's a bit of a flag above Ryan Kent now, to be perfectly honest with you, over the way that he... And you don't want to say that players don't look like they're interested, but I felt yesterday there were moments where he could have done a little bit more, could have played in Morelos in the first half right at the start. He had the opportunity to shoot towards the end of the game, just blatantly didn't fancy it. Now, whether that's a confidence thing, I don't know. But it is a problem. You can't go to Celtic Park and not be brave. Craig, if we are looking at 8 and 10, as Paul suggests, we need to replace them in the first instance, because I don't think we've got enough goodness, if you like, coming up through the B team and the academy to even act as fillers currently just now.
Yeah, no, we need back quality. I think we've made a positive progression under Beale in that area, albeit through a January window. Bringing in Cantwell and Raskin's definitely, I think everyone would unanimously agree, is the direction we want to go in. We need more of that. I think most of who we touched upon will go, maybe with the exception of Ryan Jack. The whole Scottish born players for Europe. But I was so disappointed in Ryan Jack yesterday. I mean, he was just awful. I seen Raskin having a go at him, saying, you should have been here, you should have been there. And we know Ryan Jack's capabilities. He's probably worth hanging on to because we have a lot of games throughout a season, but as a starting number 8 midfielder, we need someone with big presence, big physicality, big game mindset. That's what we need. It was glaringly obvious yesterday that we were missing it. Sorry to be off topic, but yeah, I think Kent will go. I think he's had enough. I think Morelos has to go. I think Borna, with Ridvan there, I think he'll go. And then all the others, the usual suspects, your Scott Wrights and all the fringe players, Scott Arfields, the goalie. Obviously, you touched upon the goalie. So it's a big clear out, and it's a daunting task. Celtic were able to do it, but they have money, and we don't. But it's definitely a crossroads, and we need to move on, regardless. Even if players still have something in the tank, like Ryan Kent, like Ryan Jack, like Scott Arfield, these types of players, you go, you maybe get another year out them, whatever. I think we just need to move on. We need to move on. It's that simple. I think Michael Beale's getting the absolute best he can out of the current crop of players. If he had a hand in the signings that he brought in with Raskin and Cantwell, good, because that means he knows what we need. So let's give him the summer. Let's give him the chance he deserves. Kind of dreading the rest of this season, given what I've seen from the players yesterday. Not going to lie, but Beale needs to be given the summer, pre-season, transfer window, you name it, and we go from there.
Okay, I'm going to stick with you because I'm keen to get your thoughts on Tillman. Listen, I think we went into the game yesterday and he's one of the guys you're looking at, to, like it or not, whether he's 20 years old in his first professional season or whether he's 25 and a seasoned pro. And if we're going to be paying sort of north of 5 million, these are the games that you want him to turn up and do something. He was disappointing yesterday, I feel.
Yeah, he didn't do well, plain and simple. He played like a schoolboy yesterday. You know, he's maybe showing his youth and naivety. My older brother constantly he reminds me that he just hasn't done it in these big games, and for the price tag he's commanding, we can't afford to take a punt on players that don't do it in the big games. Hard not to agree with him on the back of yesterday, you know, and that's the two sides, because he scores 2 goals in his sleep against Dundee United, right? But in these big games, that's when it matters. And I'm just not sure. It's a very difficult one because, you know, it's a bit like the Ryan Kent situation. You go, okay, well, who do we bring in? You know, everyone thought Matondo was, you know, signed with the view to replacing Ryan Kent. Not such an easy task, right? But is that the mindset we want to go in with the club? No player should be bigger than the club. The club should be driving the mentality of, okay, we need to sign quality. Nothing else will do. This is the Rangers standard. And I feel like that's what Gerrard did. And we need to repeat that. And through Michael Beale, who was his first team coach, we have a good chance of repeating that. Tillman, very 50-50 on Tillman. He's very young. If he has a decision to make, I don't know, just from his game mentality yesterday, he might fancy an easy life in the Bayern Academy again, rather than thrown into cauldrons like yesterday. I don't know, but I guess time will tell.
Tommy, Tillman is the headline, I think, for a lot of the support just now. I think we were all looking forward to seeing him and Cantwell and Raskin yesterday. Of the three of them, Raskin or Rascan for Ross Chalmers, who I'm sure is looking in. Rascan. He was good yesterday, and he looked like he'd played that game before. And I think that's really important when you win these games, making your debut, that you don't look like a fish out of water, and you do look like you can handle the cauldron that it inevitably brings, and you don't let bits and pieces get into your head, and you just concentrate and you play your game. He was good yesterday. He was everything I think we wanted Tillman to be as well, however, and for every big game opportunity that comes up between now and the end of the season that Tillman maybe doesn't perform, and I don't want this to sound harsh, but for every game that he has the opportunity to maybe take a game by the scruff of the neck, and now you're looking at Hampden in a couple of weeks' time, and then Ibrox in May. These are 2 opportunities for Malik Tillman to really show that he wants to be around as a Rangers player next season.
First of all, welcome and hello to all the Celtic fans who are in the comments and watching the poll. This is what informed, reasonable discussion looks like. So you're welcome to it. In terms of Tillman, yeah, I like Malik Tillman. I think he's a very, very good player. Yes, I know he's young, but there's lots of good young players as well. You know, we've got that option on him, which is something I reckon we will exercise, in all honesty, right? But it is a growing concern that in these big games, you know, and we're not talking about a small amount of money that's going to be laid out on him, and he has, really went missing in them, in all honesty. So yeah, it's fine to do your Dundee Uniteds. You don't expend 5-6 million on somebody to do it against Dundee United, in all honesty. So yeah, we need to think long and hard about that. And then it's a case of what else we might have up our sleeve in terms of Ross Wilson, etc. So, but I do like him as a player, but definitely a growing concern. He doesn't seem to have delivered recently. I do think that the cup game is the one, right? Let's see people deliver on that. To your Raskin, whatever, right? Yeah, looks like a good player. Cantwell looks like a good player. I think they will look even better as they cycle into next season when Michael Beale has reshaped more of the squad again. So just while you guys were talking there, and I don't want to spend tons of time doing it, but I was running through. So my batting order of who might leave or not, right? McGregor, McLaughlin, Kent, Morelos, Matondo, Barisic, there maybe. I mean, he's 2024 is his contract, so you might just want to cash in, actually, particularly if you've got Yilmaz. Helander, remember him? He's still on the payroll, so he'll go. Kamara, maybe. Davis, off the ball, with the best will in the world to that young guy, but that might just be enough here. Kemar Roof, once they get him at the cellophane or the bubble wrap that he's in at the moment. I would take money for Sakala and jettison him. I would take money for the Scottish Sakala, which is Scott Wright, and jettison him as well. And then you've got a question round about John Lundstrom. He's fallen off the boil. He's also a 2024 contract. So as you run down that is a lot of players. I think it comes in somewhere like 13. I haven't counted it, and then Tillman's one to come back in. There's a lot there, not only in terms of the volume, but the quality, because some of these players have delivered for us at various different points, and then the style of play that's going to manage into. And people talk about you've got maybe Hadji to come back in and all that. Fine, I sometimes think that Hadji flies to deceive as well, but there we are. Well, there we go, Ryan. Good man. But yeah, I think there's. That's not one of my burner accounts, by the way. I am not. I'm not Ryan Stewart. But I think that the size of the. I just saw a comment there. I think Arfield recently signed an extension to the deal, so I wouldn't expect him to go. If he hadn't, I may be wrong there, but I think if he hadn't, he would be up for that. But at some point, you want to retain some senior players around about that squad. And if you get rid of your likes of McGregor and your Davis, etc., you're naturally looking at your Tav, your Golson, your Arfield to keep some cohesion of the dressing room and etc. You can put a question mark at Tom Lawrence. I think would be a huge one actually. But yeah, so all roads point to two things: the cup game, right, and hopefully the final. No point in winning the first one if you don't want to send, right? And then the summer, which will be, and we say this every year, but really transformational for Rangers, because Michael Beale has to come out of that with his stamp on it and be able to hit the ground running. Because if Ange Postecoglou's here, and there's no guarantee that he might, he will be, he might get a job elsewhere, but if he is, Beale needs to take him apart next year, and it's a big ask. Postecoglou's a good manager, he's done a really good job at Parkhead. I don't think they're unbeatable. I know I say that coming off the back of a 3-2 defeat, right? But I think we can get closer, and this summer is huge in terms of putting down where the ambition is from this particular board and what's the art of the possible with the budget that we have.
Craig, last one for you tonight, and this is just something that broke before we went live at 8 o'clock, so I don't know if you've had the chance to see it, so I apologise if I haven't. The fourth official have went public tonight and confirmed that they understand that Rangers have approached now managerless Hearts over their captain and leading goal scorer, Lawrence Shankland, I would assume, with a move in the summer. Is he the sort of guy that we should be or will be looking at come May, or is he just a Scottish name that ticks a few boxes that the mix tonight by those guys?
I hadn't seen that, so you're getting real-time, genuine reactions. I would have leaned towards the second point that you've made. Just another Scottish guy, good for the cup games, can bang them in against your Dundee Uniteds of this world, etc., etc. I have to caveat by saying that I don't watch Hearts other than when they play Glasgow Rangers, and I don't really know how good Lawrence Shankland is. So could we do much worse than Lawrence Shankland in the Scottish League? Probably not. Is he our main striker going forward? A replacement for a fading Alfredo Morelos? Not for me. And And that was yesterday's game, wasn't it? I mean, by the way, there was nothing in yesterday's game. Absolutely nothing in it. The difference was their strikers are lethal and on form, and ours aren't they? That was the difference. They took their chances, we didn't. That was the difference. There's nothing in the game. So in terms of competing, we're right there. We just need a bit of quality. Shankland, wow, okay. I think I would have him if he knows what's required in a Rangers jersey, as in get in the building and raise your game by 10%, because that's what's required. Look at Scott Wright. Don't be another Scott Wright. He's an Aberdeen player. He's still an Aberdeen player. Hasn't cut it. So that'd be my instant reaction to your bombshell that you've laid on me there, Scott.
Listen, Craig, it's been good to have you on tonight. I've really enjoyed your time. I appreciate it. It's kind of 3:10 in the afternoon over there for you now on your Sunday, isn't it? So you're taking time out, so I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Pleasure as always, and great to be part of the team. Thank you.
And Tommy, always, I know you've had a particularly busy day and spent a good part of your day driving, so I appreciate you busting a gut to get back and join us for it. Thank you.
Well, listen, happy to be on, talk to yourselves and the watch as well. I think we've covered a lot of grounds. Shankland is a no from me as well, by the way, I have to say. But a wee shout out to, I think it was Finn Fogel, who'd queried my not including Scott Arfield. I do think Scott Arfield, his contract is out this year. So fair play to Finn Fogel. I would have included him on that list if I'd recognised that.
And listen, Finn, it is always good to pick up Tommy for stuff. It's something that we all revel in. We don't get away with doing it often, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's great when the moment comes. Listen, if you have watched this tonight on YouTube, be quiet. On Twitter or Facebook tonight, we really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. If you are looking for us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at This Is Ibrox, Instagram at This Is Ibrox, and we're just This Is Ibrox across at Facebook. 2 cracking articles that you can find on our Wix site are available now. Kai Watson has done a piece for us on Ryan Jack and whether he should get an extension or not come the summer. And Gus, who makes his podcast debut on Wednesday, has also done a fantastic piece on the move from a back 4 to potentially a back 3. I reckon if you can jump on and have a look, I recommend that you do that. I should say that tomorrow, I think if Ross Chalmers is well enough, he will try and host Gavin Kelly and Shug from 6:30. If you can join them, I recommend you do. And that's all for tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night.